animal can't talk, but I thought I heard.
Hey Ben, on the number line, where's 1/3?
I said first draw a line with 2 arrows. And hey, I know a cool tune. Here's how it goes. 0 to 1 is the whole that we split apart. The denominator tells us into how many parts.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to grade 8 math, and we're going to be doing fractions today. And here I am sitting in front of a piano. And why am I sitting in front of a piano when we're talking about fractions? Well, I was thinking about that, and when you look at a music score, it has all these different notes on it. It has quarter notes and half notes and whole notes and eighth notes, 32nd notes, even 64th notes. And they all have to fit together in order for the song to be sung or played properly. For example, in this one, do you want to build a snowman? Well, certainly not today, but it says here that every time between 2 black bars, there has to be 4 beats. So there has to be the addition of the notes, which are quarter notes and eighth notes here, have to add up to 1. And every quarter note is 1 beat. And every eighth note is half a beat. So here we have 8 half notes, which will add up to 4. So fractions are everywhere. So just for something to start off with. So today in fractions, we're going to talk about estimation. So estimation, what does that mean? And why is that important? Well, it's really important in math because when we're doing a problem or we're doing a word problem, it's good to be able to look at it when we first start and say to ourselves, what do I think the answer is going to be? Like, what is a reasonable guess to this answer? And then when we get the answer, is it close to what we estimated? And if it's not, was I off in my estimation, or is there something I did in the problem that didn't come out so that my estimation and my problem answer are close together? So we're going to talk about estimation. And what we're going to look at today mostly is estimation with fractions, so either subtracting or adding. And what this is an estimation is a time when you're not going to have time to figure it out with a pencil and paper. You're just going to have, maybe this is a mental math exercise at the beginning or the end of a class, and you're going to be given a problem like this, and someone's going to ask you, is the answer above or below 1? And you're going to have a quick look at it because you're not going to have 2 minutes. You're going to only have 2 minutes to do 10 questions. Is this above or below 1? So that's what we're going to work on a little bit today. And we worked on benchmarks a little bit in our last lesson. So I'm just going to, first of all, we're going to start with a benchmark activity. So I want you to stop the video here, and I want you to run and get a piece of paper. Just cut the long side of maybe a piece of loose leaf or a piece of printer paper, or it can be from an old magazine, anything at all. And that's all you're going to need, and either a pencil or a marker, something you can mark on the paper with. So you stop the video for a second, and when you come back, we'll start the activity. All right, welcome back. So I have my piece of paper here. This is my strip of paper, and it's just cut off the long side of a printed printer piece of paper that's blue, and I made it blue so that you could see what I was doing. So take your strip, and the first thing I want you to do is to fold it in half. So we're just going to fold it in half like this. Okay, and make a nice crease where you folded it. And when you open it up, I want you to take your marker, and on it with your marker, I want you to write 1/2, right where that crease is, because we have separated our paper in 1/2. And it doesn't matter if your piece of paper is longer or shorter than anyone else. If you folded it in half, the crease is at 1/2. So I'm going to write 1/2 on mine, and you go ahead and write it on yours. So 1/2. So that's our 1/2 mark. We know that crease means 1/2 on this piece of paper. So the next thing I want you to do is I want you to take the ends and fold them into the crease in the center. So fold them right into the crease in the center. So we'll fold that in, and again make a nice crease. Do the same with the other side. Fold it into the crease in the center and make another good crease. And when we open that up, we now have between here and here. And before I go any further, we should really write a 0 here and a 1 at the end. So let's go ahead and do that. That should be our first thing. So we'll write a 0 here and a 1 here. All right? So we've now got a crease that's halfway between 0 and 1/2. And we know from our last lesson that halfway between half of 1/2 is a quarter. So let's write that in. 1/4 on that crease between 0 and 1/2. We know that 2/2 is the same as 2/4. So this is going to be 3/4, isn't it? So let's go ahead and write 3/4 there. So there we have that. All right, so let's fold them back into the center again. I'm just going to put my marker down for a second. So let's fold them down in the center again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this edge and we're going to put it into the center. I'm going to fold that into the center and make a crease as best you can. It's getting a little bit thicker, but this is our last crease. And do the same with the other side. And we're going to crease that. All right, so now when we open it up, we have now a crease that's halfway between 0 and 1/4. So we know from our last lesson that that is an 1/8. So let's write 1/8 right beside that line. And then down here between 3/4, which we know is 6/8, it's an equivalent fraction. We can actually write that below that if we want, 6/8. My 8 isn't very good, but 6/8. So this is going to be 7/8 because we know that 1 is 8/8, isn't it? So let's write 7/8 here. All right, so now we have a benchmark. Oh yes, and here we can write 3/8. That'll be 3/8. We know 1/2 is 4/8, and this would be 5/8. So now we have a number line we can use as a benchmark. We have 0, 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, 1/2, 5/8, 3/4 or 6/8, 7/8, and 1. So if we had something, for example, 2/3, where do you think you would fit 2/3 on there? First of all, first question I would ask myself, is 2/3 greater or less than 1/2? So is 2/3 greater than less than 1/2? I'll let you think about that for a minute. So 2/3 is greater than 1/2, isn't it? So we know we're going to be here. Is 2/3 greater or less than 5/8? What do you think about that? 2/3 greater than less than 5/8. I'll leave you with that one. And on the video, I'd like you to tell me if 2/3 is where you would put 2/3 on the number line. So we're not going to give the answer right now. I want you to tell me when you do your video on Flipgrid, is 2/3 greater than 5/8 or less than 5/8, and where would you put it on the number line? So this is something you can use for a benchmark, and you can make this anytime at all. Anytime you have a strip of paper, you can use this as a benchmark to try and figure out where and how large your fraction is. All right, so we're going to use estimation with fractions, and there's two ways for us to do that. One is with benchmarks, and one is with the relative size of a fraction. So I'm just going to turn the camera over to the easel, so just give me a second. I'll just have to turn it a little bit, and then we'll go over there, and we'll do some work on that. All right, there we go. All right, so we're going to do some work on estimations. All right, so the first one I'm going to put up here. Now this is something that would be, again, something that would be like mental math, and you're not going to have time to do it with a pen and a pencil. So we have this question here, and the teacher wants to know, or whoever wants to know, or maybe it's on a test or a mental math test, is this the answer going to be for this above or below 1? And I'm just going to get myself a larger marker because I don't think you're going to be able to see that. So let's get a great big thick marker and let's go over that so you can see it. So I have 12/13 and 7/8. There, much better. You can see that much better. All right, so when looking at this, let's use benchmarks to start off with. 12 over 13, well, that's going to be pretty close to 1, isn't it? And 7/8, also pretty close to 1. So when we look at this, we can say to ourselves, well, I don't know what the exact answer is, but that's not what was asked of me. I was asked, is this over or above 1? And we can look at this and we can say, that would be over 1, wouldn't it? Very close to 1, very close to 1. Only 1/8 away from 1, only 1/13 away from 1, even smaller. So we could say that that was over 1. And we're using benchmarks to know that, knowing where they would come on a number line. So if we had a number line, and this is 0, and this is 1, 12/13 would be very close to 1, and 7/8 would only be a little bit behind it. So if we added those two together, we would absolutely be above 1. All right, let's try another one. This one, let's look at the relative size of a fraction. Okay, so if we had 7/8, and we wanted to add to that 1/10. Okay, so we don't have time with a pen or a pencil. We look at 7/8, and that's only 1/8 away from 1. 1/8 away from being 1, because we know that 8 over 8 equals 1, doesn't it? We know that from our last lesson in class. So this is only 1/8 away, okay? So 1/8. And 1/8 is larger than 1/10, isn't it? So it's going to be close to 1, but not quite 1, isn't it? Because we know that we need 1/8 to get the 1, and 1/10 is a little bit smaller than 1. And if you're ever confused about trying to figure that out as well, the other way you can do it, if you had something like a pizza, and you wanted that divided into 8s. So there you go, there's 8s there, and we had 1/8 of that. But then if you had a pizza and you wanted it divided into 10ths, so let's see if we can do this in a reasonable way here. And then each of these, so a 10th of a pizza, you're going to get a smaller piece, aren't you? So that's how we know that a 10th is smaller than an 8th. So we know from just the relative size of these that this is going to be under 1, isn't it? Just slightly under 1. So this is under 1. All right, let's try one more example, and just while we're doing it, you can think of a strategy that you would like to use to do it. So let's see 3/8 plus 5/6. Okay, you can stop the video for a minute and see what you would use, and then come on back on and we'll talk about it. All right, welcome back. So 3/8. So I'm going to use benchmark first. Okay, so 3/8 is pretty close to a little bit less than 1/2, isn't it? But 5/8 is pretty close to 1. So if I have my number line, and we have 1/2 here, 3/8 is probably going to be somewhere around here, 3/8. And 5/6 is going to be way up here. I only need one more 6 to get there, to get to 1. So I would guess that that's going to be over 1. Now if we were doing relative size, we could say this was close to 1/2. I only need 1/2 more to get to 1. This is more than 1/2, so I know that by that I'd also be over 1. So this would be over 1. There we go. All right. So that's what we're talking about today, about estimation. So that's our about estimation. So today on Flipgrid, you'll see this video, of course, you're watching it. And then there's going to be a problem sheet that has more of those on it, more of those addition or subtraction where you have to estimate. And what I want you to do is go through those. There's 5 or 6 of them. And on the video, you'll have 5 minutes. I'd like you to draw me a picture of the strategy that you used, and then using your own words, describe your strategy and how you came up with whether this answer would be above 1 or below 1. So that's what I want you to do on your video for this week. And also on the link this week, you'll find the PowerPoint from last lesson, an activity about glasses of milk and that you can try. There's a link to that great song that was at the beginning of the video, and also a link to daily STEM activities that you can do at home that are kind of fun. You can do them out in your yard, or you can do them in the house with your family. So those things are all there. And if you have any questions, you can just actually send me a video from Flipgrid, or you can email me at dawn, DAWN, .McNiven, McNiven, @gmail.com. So that is our lesson for today. And I think I'll just send you out maybe with some music. Anyways, I'm so glad you joined me today for fractions. Fractions are kind of fun. We'll do something else with fractions on our next lesson. I hope you have a great day.
What you